Hi everyone, and welcome to my Inktober Sketchbook tour for 2021. And this is my 6th year in a row that I've taken part in this awesome challenge, and I'm really glad to say that this is the 6th Inktober Sketchbook that I've completed. And before I show you the drawings in this sketchbook, I want to tell you the supplies I used. So after working on the pencil sketch, for each drawing I started off by adding all the inking with Pigma Micron pens, and I also used a Pigma Micron brush pen, which helped me out so much throughout this sketchbook. For all the shading and the colouring, I used Copic Ciao markers, and then for the highlighting, I used a white Sakura GellyRoll pen and a white Faber-Castell Polychromos pencil. And this is a Rowney Earthbound sketchbook. And this year, I made sure to challenge myself more than ever before. I tried lots of different and challenging ideas, and I've been really looking forward to sharing them in this video. So here we go! Actually, I'll start off with the drawing I worked on the front cover. And I worked on this after completing the sketchbook, and I thought it'd be awesome if the front cover actually links into the first page of the sketchbook, so the story literally starts on the front. With my red-caped adventurer that I love adding to my drawings, I've added them to my drawings since, I think, 2015, so they have been... their story's been going on for quite a while now, and so you can see they're heading towards this massive crystal structure with the solar eclipse in the background shining down and highlighting this crystal, and they're heading down into whatever the structure is. And the word prompt on day one was crystal, so you can see they're heading towards it. And then on day one, the drawing I worked on for this was this magical crystal inside that structure. So you can see the red-caped adventurer is now here, and they're looking up towards this magical floating crystal with the white ink highlighting it and the light beams shining out and all the crystals like shooting off in different directions in the background and in the foreground. I just love working on fantasy drawings, and Inktober has been a huge inspiration for me over the years, and it's one of the reasons why I've ended up loving working on fantasy drawings. Then on to day two, and the word prompt was suit. So I worked on this astronaut with their spacesuit, protecting them from this harsh environment. They're on this planet's surface, and you can see I tried to blur the background with the markers, just trying to make it look like it's further in the distance, and then you can see the sharper details reflected in the astronaut's spacesuit in the visor. And I just tried to add lots of little details with the ink, like the tubes and the buttons and the heart monitor. And one thing I've really tried a lot throughout the sketchbook, you'll notice I added a lot more ink. This year I really wanted to push myself to just be braver with my inking. So you can see I added a lot of ink in the background here. I was worried that it would actually damage the paper, like I have managed to damage the paper in previous years where I had to restart the drawings. But I've got a good method down where I add all the inking with a brush pen at first, with the Pigma Micron brush pen, and then I wait for that to dry. Then I add another layer of black ink with the black Copic marker. And just those two layers, it makes a nice solid black ink background that doesn't damage the paper, so that's a relief. Then on to day three, and the word prompt was vessel, and I worked on this magical floating ship. And I just love working on fantasy drawings like this. You can see the red-caped adventurer is down here with the moon shining down, and you see the moon's reflection in the water below. And one thing I really tried to focus on throughout this year's Inktober was the way I draw clouds. Trying to make them more stylized and trying to show more movement and flow in them. In previous years I would have just added clouds in horizontal lines and just getting smaller and darker as they get into the background. But this year I just tried to make them look like they're actually moving and trying to make them look like they're flowing across the page, and I'm really happy with them. The word prompt on day 4 was knot, and so I worked on this tree with the knots in its roots and its trunk and its branches. And I tried to be braver again with the inking, adding that dark shading towards the top, and it fades down towards the trunk. And you can see I added highlighting in the background, but I tried something different with the highlighting, where I silhouetted the trees in the background, trying to make it look like the light is shining through the forest. And I'm really happy with this, and how it makes that tree at the centre stand out. Moving on to day 5, and the word prompt was raven. And so I worked on this raven, pretty self-explanatory, but this was a tough one. It took a lot longer than I expected it to. Adding the individual inking to the feathers and the shading, and the layers of shading between the feathers. It took a long time, but I'm really proud of the result. I'm very happy with this one, and I think it's one of my favourites of the month. After that, on day 6, the word prompt was spirit, and so I worked on this magical sword that's been bound to this spirit. So whoever the unlucky adventurer is that's got to try and claim this sword has to face this spirit as well. You see the magical effects floating upwards from the sword. And then on to day 7, and the word prompt was fan. And this was October the 7th was my birthday, so I wanted to work on something bright and colourful, and I've never attempted to draw a better fish before. It was really fun, and I would love to try and attempt more drawings of them. I didn't realise how many varieties there were of them, all different shapes and beautiful colours. So I tried to add a nice coral red and a nice aqua blue, with the light shining down and highlighting the edges and the scales. I'm really happy with this. On day 8, the word prompt was watch, and I worked on this watchtower. You can see there's another one in the distance. I'm imagining a series of watchtowers through a mountain range, and they're keeping an eye out for the dragon that's passing by. So you can see the beacons are lit, and they're warning the nearby village, and you see the red-caped adventurers down here. This was really fun, and I love adding these kind of snow effects. You can see the snow all just layered on top of the rock. After that, on day 9, the word was pressure, and similar to the drawing I worked on day 2, where the word was suit, and I worked on the astronaut, this is a deep-sea diver, and you can see I tried to work on an old-fashioned deep-sea diving suit, with the heavy helmet and the rope and the pipes and the valves. It was a tough challenge trying to add all the details to this one, and it took a long time, especially adding all the ink again, similar to the day 2 drawing. You see the bubbles floating up as well, and you have the fish swimming around. This was really fun, and I think it's another one of my favourites of the month. Then on to day 10, and the word was pick. And another one with the red-caped adventurer. You can see they've climbed this magical, massive tree. They've got the moon shining down and highlighting this huge apple. So it must be some kind of magical apple that the adventurer has been chosen to come and pick. So that's going to be a tough challenge. Sour was the word prompt on day 11, and I struggled for a while on this one, but eventually I worked on this lemon. And I'm really happy with how this turned out, because I tried to add lots of fine details with the finest of my white highlighter pens, just adding detail to the leaves and the lemon in the foreground. You can see the highlights around the edges of the leaves, and also to add the shine effect on the lemon. And then also with the rain falling down and having the water running down the lemon as well, you can see I tried to add water effects on it. I've never tried to do that with this kind of drawing before, and I'm really pleased with this one. On day 12, the word prompt was stuck, and I worked on this magical butterfly. You could imagine this being collected by a witch or a wizard, and they've got it stored on their shelf. You can see the label attached to the cork, so it's some kind of magical creature that's been caught. You can see its friends have flown in, they're trying to help it, but it's stuck inside this glass container, and I really hope it gets out. You see the magical effects floating around, and the light refracted onto the surface below. This was a really interesting and fun idea to try. And the word prompt on day 13 was roof. And I worked on this scene with the red-caped adventurer, and they're looking over at this castle in the distance. You got someone in the window, someone they maybe need to help. You got this cat in the foreground sitting on this roof with this lantern. I'm really happy with this one because of the layers I tried to add to it. So you can see the different separated layers, just trying to create that illusion of distance. You see the moon shining down as well, and the clouds. Again, trying to make those clouds look a bit more interesting, sweeping across the page. And after that, the word on day 14 was tick. And I struggled initially with this one, but in the end I decided to attempt this fantasy idea of this magical clock tower that's stuck in place. You can see it's affecting time and space around it, with the clock spinning really fast, the clouds spiralling upwards, and the rocks floating around it, and the red-caped adventurer down here, and this is the next challenge they face. Then on day 15 the word was helmet. And this is very similar to a drawing I worked on back in 2019 of a skull amongst treasure. So we've got the treasure, we've got the skull, but the skull is wearing a very opulent looking helmet. You can see these horns and this gold trim and this bright crimson. And you've got the light shining down, and you've got cobwebs, just showing how long it's been sitting there. So what's the story here? Is this a very important person has passed away, or was this a treasure hunter that didn't make it? Then on to day 16, and the word was compass. And I loved working on this one. I initially was going to just work on the compass, but then I decided to add some storytelling elements to it. So you got the treasure map, with the X marks the spot. You have this feather quill that they've been using to write, and you've got some gold coins. It seems to be sitting on a table with the boards. And I'm just so happy with the perspective I tried to add to this one, with the light shining down and adding that shadow, adding the highlights along the edges of the paper, and just trying to add some details on that treasure map. It was really fun. And then on day 17, the word was collide, and I found this one really fun as well. Trying to create this alien landscape. You can see the planet in the distance. Maybe we're on the moon of this planet, and they're being bombarded with asteroids. You can see the huge impact here. It was really fun trying to create that effect with both the black ink of the background and also using the white highlights. I'm really glad I tried this, and I'm actually very happy with how it turned out. Along with the compass, another two of my favourites of the month. Next up, on day 18, the word was moon. And this one is quite a contrast from that previous drawing of absolute destruction. Now we have something very calm and peaceful. I tried to draw these redwoods, and their roots are going down into the stream. They got some fungi, and this very bright moon is highlighting everything. You got some more trees in the distance as well. I just tried to add lots of different layers of detail, and this one took quite a long time, but I had a lot of fun with it. I think the thing that took the most time was the line work on the trees. Then on day 19, the word was loop, and I worked on this dragon, inspired by the design of Chinese dragons, having its body looping around. The line work took the most time on this one, especially the white ink lines. They took so long, but I'm really happy with this one. I think it's quite effective and it stands out. Then moving on to day 20, and the word prompt was sprout. And I worked on this magical seed. You can see the roots down here, and it sprouted these huge leaves. The red-caped adventurer is standing on this leaf down here. And I'm imagining that they've been tasked with trying to collect whatever magical fruit that this seed has produced. Just another fantasy drawing. I just love working on these ideas. Then moving on to day 21, and the word was fuzzy. And I worked on this extremely fuzzy cat. This one, I started off by creating a regular, non-super fuzzy cat, and then I started adding more and more layers with the pencil and the markers, just building up more layers with them, adding the markers on top of the pencil, adding the pencil on top of the markers, and just building up more and more layers. And then eventually I also used the multi-liner to start defining those layers in amongst this shaded area. And then I also used the white ink pen to add that crazy fuzziness on top. This was a really fun experiment. Then on to day 22, and the word was open. And this one I was so excited to try. I really wanted to try and draw a magical portal on this toned tan paper to try and get that contrast of a different world through a portal. So you can see there's a winter snowy landscape around the portal, and we've got these steps going upwards, the snow sitting on the steps. The red-caped adventurer is walking into the portal, and the wooden doors have opened, and you can see a totally different climate inside. And so leak was the word prompt on day 23. And I tried this idea. I struggled for a while to think of something to work on, but in the end, I decided to try this idea with some industrial pipes going along the top. And I wanted to convey the idea of something more positive coming from something negative. So these pipes, obviously they've been intrusive on nature, but they're leaking, and now nature is thriving because of that. You've got this tree, you've got the tree roots, you've got all these plants around this water, you've got the fish and the water lily and lots of butterflies flying around. I just wanted to have that, the contrast of the man-made pipe work and the bright, colourful nature surrounding it and thriving. And after that, on day 24, the word was extinct. And I really wanted to try this fantasy idea with the red-caped adventurer, and they're standing on top of this massive giant's skull. And I'm imagining that these giant beings were driven to extinction a long time ago. And the red-caped adventurer is climbing this mountain. You can see the clouds sweeping upwards and the stars in the sky. You see the old arrows and the sword buried in the giant skull. Another really exciting one to try. And then the word prompt on day 25 was splat. And I wanted to work on another fantasy art drawing with the red-caped adventurer, and they're narrowly avoiding this horrible green goo splatting down just above them. I just wanted to work on this huge mushroom, and like imagining it's like a mushroom forest that the adventurer is walking through, and trying to avoid all this. I'm imagining kind of poisonous substance that's trying to crash down on them. Then on to day 26, and the word was connect, and another fantasy drawing. So the word being connect, I imagined a bunch of bridges connecting all these different peaks, and it's just a shortcut for the adventurer to take, avoiding that horrible, icy, dangerous landscape, and they have a much easier walk across these bridges, even though I hope they don't have a fear of heights, because that would be a problem for this situation on this very narrow bridge. This was fun, trying to create that perspective, and adding the depth with the black ink down here and like fading it upwards, and the moon shining down, having that nice contrast of the bright moon and the dark shading. Then spark was the word prompt on day 27, and I worked on this. As some of you know, I love drawing dragons, and I've been drawing them a lot over the past 5 or 6 years, and I tried to add at least one detailed drawing of dragon to each of my Inktober sketchbooks over the past few years. And I got to this point in the sketchbook where I'd only worked on that silhouette of one on day 8 with watch. So this was just the word spark. It just gave me this idea straight away. I wanted to be more brave again with the inking, so I added this extremely dark environment, the trees silhouetted, and the only light source in this drawing is the dragon creating those sparks and just lighting up the area around them. And I just tried to have all these sparks flying around everywhere, and a bit of crimson colouring as well. Then on day 28, the word was crispy, and quite a contrast between the sparks of the dragon, and now we have a nice calm and peaceful scene of this house. They've got the fire lit inside with the chimney going, so they're nice and cosy and warm inside, while they've got a crispy, cold environment around them with the icicles, the snow coming down. We've got some ice in the foreground with some frosted plants and a pumpkin. And the challenge for me on this one was the layering, to try and create that depth with the trees in the background. You've got the house, the cliffs and the trees, and then the foreground with the ice and the plants. This was a really fun challenge. Then after that, on day 29, the word was patch. And I couldn't go another Inktober without drawing more pumpkins in a pumpkin patch. So we've got the carved pumpkin in the foreground, we've got the pumpkin vine with these ones still attached. We've got the moon shining down and highlighting and silhouetting the scarecrow. This one took a lot longer than I anticipated because of the line work and trying to layer the markers in a way that added depth, adding that darker shading in the foreground. And then on day 30, the word was slither. And this one took such a long time. It took so long because of the scales. I just loved working on this idea though, with the red-caped character. They've now got a spear and they're facing off against their next foe, this giant snake. And to create its scales, I started off with a multi-liner, just marking off all the line work. And then I used the white pencil and the white ink pen to add all the individual highlights to each scale. And then I used the markers on top to define the snake's shape and to get that kind of 3D shape across, especially in these foreground areas, and then having it fade off into the background. I also added a dark background fading downwards with the stars in the sky. I also added these variations of the clouds that I've been adding in the drawings. So the combination of all these different elements from the previous drawings in the sketchbook, this one just took such a long time, and I'm actually very happy with the results though. I think the snake looks nice in 3D, especially in front of that dark background. And then on day 31, the final day of the challenge, for Halloween, the word prompt was risk. And I worked on this very scary drawing of this dark forest. We've got blood moon shining down and being reflected in the puddles down here. We've We've got these old trees, we've got the grave in the foreground and some in the background, and then you've got a creature here. And I based it on a leshen, which is also based on a leshy from Slavic folklore, which is a very dangerous forest spirit that's protecting the forest. Well, some people believe it protects the forest from humans, building on them. But then it's also just seen as a creature that just lives to kill, and it's extremely dangerous and intelligent. So yeah, a nice scary drawing for the final drawing of the challenge, and this Inktober was so awesome. I feel like I tried a bunch of fun ideas that I hadn't attempted before, in ways that I hadn't attempted before. I challenged myself to attempt new drawing techniques and to, as I said, be braver with ink, and I feel really proud of this sketchbook, and I really hope you enjoyed watching. The whole Inktober challenge this year was amazing, and I just loved checking out the hashtags every day of the challenge. Just seeing so many incredibly talented artists every day, it's just so inspiring. And I highly recommend trying out Inktober, or any variation of the challenge. Monthly drawing challenges like this can be a great way to hone your skills and learn new drawing techniques and push you out of your art comfort zone. I know it's helped me so much over the past 6 years. And I just love working on these sketchbooks, and it's really amazing to look back at these sketchbooks, and you can really see your progress over time, and that's why I really believe in challenges like this. Thank you so much for watching this video and for all the support throughout Inktober. It really meant a lot to me. If you want to see more art videos, then feel free to subscribe to this channel, and any likes or shares on this video are hugely appreciated. If you want to follow and support my art progress, then be sure to check out the links in the description for my Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and Patreon. And once again, thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much for the support. I really, really appreciate it. I hope you're all doing okay, and I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you all soon.